Thank you so much. I will just start sharing my screen. One second. I hope my screen is visible to everyone. So I will quickly apprise you of a summation of the campaign and what it is about. So as sir has said, the campaign is titled Hak Hamara Bhi To Hai. This is after NALSA's theme song, which of course all of you are very well aware about. And this time, this particular campaign, so there is of course a pan-India campaign, which is relevant for all general public and everyone else. But Hak Hamara Bhi To Hai has a specific focus to ensure or provide legal assistance or legal advice and services to those persons who are in custody, but not only just adults, but also children. So there are two under the Hak Hamara Bhi To Hai campaign. There are two focus points. One is your children who are detained in observation homes. So naturally being the children in conflict with law, the CCLs that we know them as, and the other being prisoners who are also in detention. And what has been noticed is, and if you refer to NALSA's email, then what has been noticed that there is a lot of gap between the understanding and information that is available, but by those people in custody, whether it's an adult or a child, and what is happening in their cases, what legal rights they have, and what is the status in their case. So so some of the purposes of the campaign is to address that. So going forward, what are the overall objectives for prisoners in particular? So of course, the first objective being that it ascertains that the person is represented by a lawyer at the trial, and also for appeal for bail. So here again, within prisoners, the campaign will have a focus on under trials as well as on convicts. The second being providing free legal counseling or services or assistance as required, including drafting and filing of appropriate applications. Of course, this is the task of the prison legal aid clinics. However, the general perception and the feedback has been received that the prison legal aid clinics are also not functioning as per mandate in several prisons across the country. So in campaign mode, this will be like a one-time effort to ensure that, this is done in a more prioritized manner. The third is ascertaining that person has been provided updated information regarding their cases and facilitate the communication with lawyers. So what has happened during COVID is that the communication between prisoners and their lawyers, whether they were private or legal aid, that has been interrupted. So this campaign is a mode to ensure that there is some form of communication, because prisoners are mostly, they all say that we haven't spoken to a lawyer, we don't have any communication, we do not know what has happened in our case. So this campaign is an effort to reduce that information gap and ensure that this information is made available. How you will do it, we will come to that later on when we talk about the campaign. Now, the fourth objective being for convicts, if there is an entitlement to premature release, so processing that application in the email that was sent from NALSA, there is an SOP that has now been prepared in the ages of the Supreme Court directives, which talks about the standard operating procedures for processing and for applications under premature release and parole and remission. So that would have to be followed. Then in case of under trial, so whether eligible for release under the UTRCs or otherwise on bail, so these things have to be ascertained as well. Now, after this, ascertaining that the person is in contact with family or friends, and where no family friend has been visiting, facilitating the same either physically or virtually. That also, there are a lot of success stories from across the country where PLVs and DLSAs have been instrumental in ensuring that prisoners are in touch with their families. PLVs have gone to the extent of reaching to their family members, convincing them to come to prison and talk to their family members. So this campaign is another mode to reduce that gap between family. Why? Because one of the ways or one of the road to recovery or the road to reformation lies when there is a contact with the family members. So prisoners really need that kind of communication and contact to be able to do the best of the time they are inside and to come out as reformed persons. Sixth objective is to ascertain if any person is in need of any urgent medical assistance. A lot of applications are found to legal aid lawyers where medical assistance is being sought. Why? Again, because there is very little and very inadequate medical assistance available in prisons at the moment. The Prison Statistics India data indicates that there is a shortage of doctors, there is a shortage of psychiatrists as well, and this has led to improper and inadequate healthcare, meaning that a lot of prisoners have not been able to get their medical conditions addressed. So one of the objectives of this campaign is to also provide urgent medical assistance. Again, urgent being the key here. Ascertaining if the needs of the vulnerable persons are met in any specific need or any grievance that needs to be attended. Sharing information with the prisoner and their family on a web portal to receive updated information on their cases. So the prisoners and their families should be informed about the web portal that NALSA has prepared, so that they can now directly communicate through that portal, find all the information, and are always in touch with what is happening in their cases. Now, these being the 8 objectives for the campaign for prisoners. Now, coming to children, of course, children, will be young, and their primary source of contact will be the guardians. However, the way the observation homes are being run across the country, they have been time and again in the Supreme Court also issues have been raised about the facilities that are available. So this, and again, legal services institutions also do not have a permanent presence in the observation homes. So this campaign is a way to kind of expand that and kind of address this gap where legal services institutions, you all who are legal services functionaries, can visit the observation homes and ascertain A, that every child is represented by a lawyer, B, that children are also aware of the status of their cases, whatever the age. Of course, these days awareness is much more higher than what it used to be earlier on, and children should also be aware about what is happening in their particular cases, so that this is an effort to do that. Ascertaining that the child is in contact with their guardians. A lot of places where there is no family contact, this will only lead to recidivism. So the effort should be to ensure that the children are in contact with their families, because in certain cases of juveniles, bail is granted where there is contact with the family, where the families are there to take the person in their care and support. So the third, of course, objective being this. The fourth objective being that the sharing information with the children's guardian on accessing and receiving updated information on the cases. Again, apprising the children, apprising their guardians, informing the superintendents of the childcare institutions that there is a portal, and that portal can be accessed, maybe leaving a flyer there so that, when families come to visit, they know that, okay, now there is a portal. So this is all about information sharing, bridging the gap. This is overall the overarching objective of the campaign. Now, how this campaign is going to be implemented. So at a glance, I'm going to show in detail as well, but at a glance there is, so of course on 31st, which was yesterday, the campaign was launched by the Honorable Executive Chair. Now, you had already received these documents beforehand, and the idea was that the teams should have been constituted. Nonetheless, the teams have to be constituted, and then briefing has to be provided by the DLSAs, which is all of you, about what is to be done in the campaign, and any queries or questions, etc., can be written to NALSA for any clarifications, so that there is no particular issues, or if there are queries, they can be addressed appropriately by NALSA at the initial stages of this campaign itself. Now, on 1st November, the visits have to be initiated. Of course, today is the 1st, so the visits can very well be initiated either later today or from tomorrow onwards. On 3rd, 7th, and 10th November, the core teams are to interact with the field teams. Now, I'll explain what the core teams and the field teams are at a later stage when I come to the details of the campaign. However, this campaign is not a one-time process. So the campaign is essentially that there is a team which is interacting with the prisoners, which is the field team, and then the core team is somebody who is at the DLSA level who will continuously be interacting with the field team to address the queries that keep on coming from the prison. So myself, having visited prisons in the capacity of providing this assistance, there are several issues that keep on coming up, and without having that guidance and mentorship from the DLSA to address those properly, a lot of these issues kind of get sidelined. So the effort in the campaign is to ensure that there is a proper and a coordinated follow-up of every issue and every case that is raised inside the prison. Now, on 9th November, which is of course Legal Services Day, the campaign stipulates that a legal awareness camp about rights and remedies for prisoners should be held in every prison. On 11th November, the completion of visits should take place and submission of data sheets by the DLSA should be undertaken. 15th November, the DLSA should consolidate all the reports for each district for the SLSA, and 18th November, SLSA shall submit the report for every state. Now, we wanted to simplify this process. NALSA wanted a simplified process for the reporting. So there are formats that have been developed for every step of the process, and that has been shared with all. So this is the campaign at a glance. Now I'm going to quickly now move on to the campaign document itself, so I can share what exactly the campaign talks about in every step. So I hope my screen is visible to everyone. Can somebody confirm that my screen is visible? कमल सिंह जी, मेरा स्क्रीन दिख रहा है? Hello, am I audible? Hello. Okay, thank you. All right, so under every specific step, so the main step, of course, being the constitution of the district teams. Now, there should be 3 district teams that are formed by every district by the Secretary DLSA in consultation with the DLSA chairperson. Now, what are these 3 teams? So there will be a core team. The core team will be comprising of the Secretary DLSA, 2 senior lawyers or experienced lawyers with established criminal practice of not less than 10 years, and 1 subject matter expert or representative of an academic institution or a civil society organization. This will constitute the core team. Now, the core team will be the one who will be the team that will mentor the field teams. Now, what is the field teams? So there will be 2 field teams. So there will be 1 prison field team, being the team which comprises of jail visiting lawyers, panel lawyers, and paralegals. There could be community or convict paralegals, and they should be their primary task of the PLVs will be to accompany the lawyers and do the documentation and help in that process. Now, the observation home field team will comprise of a panel lawyers and community paralegal volunteers, and if where available, a psychologist or a social worker can also be included in this team. Somebody who's working with children or who has experience of working with children can be put in these teams. So these are the 3 teams that need to be constituted. These are not very difficult to constitute because the prison field teams are already, there are prison legal aid clinics. So you already have the personnel available. You just need to assign them for a week, which is the duration of the campaign. So this entire week, and something very similar to this had been taken up some years back in relation to women prisoners. So there was a campaign for women prisoners, which was taken up pretty similar in a similar manner. But of course, women being a very small proportion, the field teams there were smaller. So here, the field teams are supposed to be a little bit bigger depending on the type of prison that is there. So that guidance has also been provided in this. So if you see here, there is a table which provides, it is guidance, it is not a mandate. However, it is guidance to ensure that interaction with prisoners should not just also be, 1 second interaction. So if there is an interaction, it should at least be substantive. And to do it substantively in the duration of the campaign, what can be done is you can have more people. So the suggested number of persons by NALSA in this campaign document is that if it's less than 250 prisoners in the prison, then 2 lawyers and 3 PLV should be sufficient. The number of days of visits can be 3 to 5 days. That would help cover all the prisoners, and it would also help to not burden the lawyers and the PLVs too much with the work. So in that sense, this table has been provided. I will not provide any more. This is quite self-explanatory. And again, as I said, this is a suggested figure. The idea behind this being that the interaction with the prisoners are meaningful. It should not be just yes, no, and that's about it, maybe taking 2 minutes per prisoner. That kind of interaction will not really help the campaign at all. So that is why these have been suggested. Also, similarly, for observation homes, a similar table has been provided. Now, I understand that not in all districts and not in all DLSAs, there may be presence of PLVs or sufficient PLVs who are visiting prisons. So one could also take in assistance from law students, preferably the seniors class students from third year onwards, who can be associated with the project or with this campaign as interns, and they need to be provided certificates at the end. So any workforce that can help in doing this work, in doing this campaign, would be quite important. So data operator, again, a data operator can be identified. If there's a full-time, very good. Otherwise, a part-time one to assist in compiling all the data from the prisons. And so that can also be taken up so that it is easier to compile information, especially in the districts where there is a huge prisoner population. So not every district would have high number of prisoners. Generally, where in the districts where the central prisons are located, there would be instance of higher number of prisoners, but that again is quite spread across the country, so it's not necessary. There are DLSAs which have very low population, such as 200 or 100, where you don't necessarily need a data operator. You can also hire an intern or any other personnel. So these are the provisions in terms of the personnel that are required. Now, how will the data be sought from observation homes? So all of so data from the prisons, so DLSA shall seek basic information from the prisons. Now, here again, I understand that a lot of DLSAs have access to the e-prisons portal, meaning that they would have access to the data of prisoners. So in that circumstance, they can pull off the data from the prison, from the e-prisons data itself. They do not necessarily need to ask the prison for the data. Otherwise, a lot of DLSAs will also be having these data lists from the UTRC campaign that was conducted some time ago. So data can also be taken from there. So it is not necessary that there should not be a delay because of the data. The data should already be available in some form at every DLSA by virtue of the campaigns or by virtue of the e-prisons database. And that information needs to be taken up, and this will be then used to prepare information cards, which are supposed to be given for every prisoner or child during the campaign. Now, the format for the information card, being Annexure A, has been provided to all of you in the initial email by NALSA. So that format has to be followed, and that particular part of the card has to be printed. They can be printed on normal paper. It can be printed. It's a short document to save on paper. It can be printed on half a page of half A4 size paper and just given to the prisoner during the day of the interaction. Now, this data, what it includes is provided, but that is already there in the format. I will not share about it. These are just the basic details that people or prisoners are supposed to be informed about. Data from from observation homes. Now, this might take a little bit of time to come through. So this data has to be asked from every observation home. And once that data comes in, the information cards can be prepared. Now, it is not necessary that on the first day, the information card can be sent. During this duration time, maybe for a period of 4 or 5 days may be taken to prepare these information cards. And on 9th, of November, which is when the Legal Services Day and when the Legal Awareness Camp is to be organized. On that particular day, these cards can be distributed to all the prisoners in an effort to reduce the information gap or to provide legal knowledge and legal information to them about their cases. So you use this time, get interns to help, get the PLVs to help in this entire process, get your retainer lawyers. So just have everyone at the DLSA to assist in this process. So convict, again, I'm not going on what this information is. Orientation program, of course, the orientation that is going on now, so I will not talk about that. Now, how will the conduct of visits happen? So the DLSA must coordinate with the officer in charge of prisons in the district about the days and timings of the visits by the field team from 1st to 11th November 2022. So of course, the day and timing of the visit will again depend on the availability of the lawyers, the availability of the PLVs, the teams. So all of that has to be figured out. So the DLSA can coordinate with the prison officer in charge and fix those days so that the prison is also aware. They can provide a space for them to come and sit and interact, and necessary permissions, etc. can be sought. Now, the DLSA must request the officer in charge to make arrangements to provide adequate space for chairs, etc. for people to sit down. An information card for each prisoner needs to be created, printed based on the data that was collected from the prisons and courts. The format, as I said, has already been given. The information card can be ready one day before the visit to prison, but as I said, you could take this time to prepare those cards where data has to be sought, and those cards can be distributed on the 9th. Or alternatively, the cards can be prepared and distributed the day of the visit. So that is up to what is possible and feasible by each one of you. But at least by the 9th of November, every prisoner should have been provided a card to them. So one day before the visit, the field visit should ensure print and take out as many interview sheets as have been provided in Annexure B. So this is again for prisoners that I'm talking about. So Annexure B is the questionnaire format for prisoners. So that has to be taken. Now, during the visit, we advise that the DLSA secretary should visit the central and district prison on the first day. So the DLSA secretary can accompany the field team on the first day of the visit. And the DLSA secretary can also, to ensure that the teams are doing effective jobs, they can also try and visit, do surprise visits of prisons during the duration when they know, because they have already set the schedule on when each team will be going. They can always go and conduct surprise visits to ascertain that the field teams are doing their work properly. Now, the DLSA secretary can ask the officer in charge to depute one officer and some warders to coordinate with the field team to ensure that there are no delays in calling the prisoners for interviews. So, given that in the prison day there are out by the DLSA secretary in consultation with the superintendent of the particular prison, and that timing needs to be maintained so that there is no infringement upon anybody else's time and this work can be done very effectively. Now, the name of prisoners can be called through the public announcement system, or a PLV can go and inform them. So that can be figured out again, depending on every prison. I understand the modus is different, so whatever works can be taken up. Now, once the prisoner appears before the field team, as I've said, the campaign says that the information card can be given then and there if it is already available, and an interview can be conducted by the pairs of one lawyer and one PLV. So the lawyer talks to the person and the PLV writes down. So there is constantly the documentation process is also going on, and it's not the same person who's talking who's also writing, because it kind of is distracting for the prisoner when the person who's talking to you keeps on writing in between. So to ensure that the prisoner gets his necessary time with the lawyer to talk to the lawyer, it's important that the lawyer is accompanied by the PLV or by the student in every interview process. Now, prison staff can be kept at a distance only to ensure security. This is important. Why? This is important because if prisoners have any issues with the prison, they will not be able to say it in front of the prison officer. So as a step, since all of you are going as legal aid lawyers or as legal aid providers, this step can be ensured. Now, post the visit, what happens that interview sheets that are taken up can be given to the data operator or any person who the DLSA designates to do the documentation process. And a format which is similar to the Word format in Annexure B has been converted into a Excel sheet format in Annexure D. Now, it's the same heads that are there that have been copied in Annexure D. So the data operator simply needs to just copy all of that data there. So there is an online database of that information. This step is important because this is what will help all of you in preparing the reporting at the later stage on. Now, the meeting of the core team and the field team should be convened by the DLSA secretary at least on 3 days, that is the 3rd, 7th, and 10th. So on the 3rd, whatever interviews were taken up on the 1st, which is today, and tomorrow on the 2nd, can be discussed. Again, on the 7th, the interviews in the next few days can be discussed. So this is a process so that, if there's any particular case which requires some urgent attention, which is not clear what it should be, because after discussion between the core team and the field team, that particular action can be taken up. During the meeting, the core team can discuss prisoner-wise cases, grievances, and appropriate directions can be issued and documented. So the documentation sheet has a column which talks about what action needs to be taken. So after the discussion, that action is taken. Now, the reason why there's focus on documentation is to ensure that every case has some action. So there may be cases where no action is required. So in those cases, you just write no action. So this, this is just to ensure that there is a proper flow of communication and work, and all the effort that is being put in the campaign by the secretaries, by the PLVs is all duly documented as well. So after a few days, not beyond a week, follow-up can be done by the secretary to check if the directions were complied with. So a constant check should be taken up by the DLSA to ensure that every case has some, wherever some action had to be taken, that has been taken or not. Now, this was for the prison. Now, coming to the observation homes. So again, for the pre-visits, the DLSA can coordinate with the observation home and that particular field team when they will go, and those visits can happen. The DLSA can request to make arrangements to provide adequate space. Information cards again have been provided in Annexure A that can be taken up. 1 day before the visit, field teams should ensure to require interview sheets, as again similar to what it was for prisons. During the visit, the core team can visit. Has been advised that the core team member, so one member of the core team. Now, since one member of the DLS secretary who is a member of the core team will be visiting the prison, then it is advised that another member of the core team, which if you remember was any other senior lawyer or a member from CSO or from academic institutions, they can be asked to visit the observation home along with the field visit on the first day. This is to ensure that everything is in order and there is a certain way of how the interviews can be done. Again, the DLSA secretaries or anyone from the core team can be asked to conduct surprise visits there. The DLSA secretaries can direct the officers, persons in charge to depute one officer and some junior staff to coordinate with the field team. Again, similar to how it was in prison. Everything else is pretty much similar on how it must be done. Post visits, again, that data sheet can come back, and the again, there is an annexure format E, which is on documentation of information from the observation homes, which can be kept in there. Now, everything else after that remains pretty much the same. The meetings can be convened by the secretaries on 3rd, 7th, and 10th. So basically, to do it together, the core team can first meet the field visit team from the prison and then meet the prison leads from the OS, or vice versa, so that the core team, the members of the core team are also available on those particular days and it doesn't take too much of their time as well. Now, these visits can also, these meetings can be held virtually if it's not possible to do them physically, because I understand that the districts are also located far away from the observation homes and prisons in a lot of places. So to save on that time or to save on that energy of transiting and traveling, it is advised that in those remote locations, these meetings can be done virtually. We do not require the physical presence to conduct those meetings. So now on the monitoring and reporting again, so there are formats for each. The SLSA is supposed to monitor the initiation of the campaign and progress at different stages. So there is a sheet for the SLSA monitoring that has also been prepared this time. This has been done looking at previous experience of the campaigns on how the SLSAs have asked for if there is, how they can monitor the campaign. So this time a monitoring sheet has been provided for the SLSA, which is again given in Annexure F. Which can be completed by the DLSA so that SLSA knows at all times how the campaign has been progressing. Now, this is specifically required because it's a short duration campaign, and it's good if there is, if there is some monitoring at the SLSA level so that SLSA is aware of how this is progressing. Now, SLSA can submit a final report, which is again in Annexure G, which has also been provided, and NALSA will then, of course, collate the final reports from all the information.